The Last Dance. Subscribe now if you're brave enough to keep watching. It was supposed to be the happiest day of their lives. Or so everyone thought. The small village of Elmsford had always been quiet, a place where time felt like it had stopped. It wasn't much more than a handful of stone houses, a church, and a cemetery that was as old as the land itself. The villagers didn't mind. They had everything they needed: peace, tradition, and a sense of community. Nothing ever disturbed their rhythm, until the night of Emily and Thomas's wedding. They had known each other for years, their families bound by generations of shared history. The wedding was to be the village's grandest event, a celebration that everyone eagerly awaited. But there was an undercurrent of tension that no one could quite place. Whispers traveled through the village like a cold breeze, too soft to catch, yet too real to ignore. Some of the older villagers warned Emily against it, told her that certain things were better left untouched. But it was her day, and she would not be swayed. The ceremony took place in the village church, a crumbling structure that had stood for centuries. It was the heart of Elmsford, with high wooden beams and stained glass windows that glowed in the afternoon sun. But as the clock struck 7, the clouds rolled in, darkening the sky in a matter of moments. The guests, sensing something was wrong, remained quiet, but the ceremony continued as planned. Emily walked down the aisle, her white dress trailing behind her like a cloud. Thomas, waiting at the altar, smiled at her, his eyes bright, his hands trembling slightly. The vows were exchanged. The rings slid onto fingers, and just as they shared their first kiss as husband and wife, the bell in the tower rang. But it wasn't the normal chime of celebration. The sound was deep, guttural, and unnatural, like a thunderclap that shook the very ground beneath their feet. The wedding guests turned to the tower, their faces pale, their mouths open in shock. It wasn't the bell's usual ring, but something far more sinister. Emily felt her skin prickle with dread, her heart racing. Thomas tried to smile, but his expression faltered as he noticed something no one else could see. At that moment, everything shifted. The bells stopped ringing, and then the floor beneath their feet cracked. The ground split open in front of them, creating a jagged chasm, as if something below was reaching up to claim them. Emily screamed, and in the chaos, Thomas's hand slipped from hers. The crowd gasped as a shadowy figure appeared at the back of the church. Tall and dark, its form blurred in the flickering candlelight. But when they finally looked back at the altar, Emily was gone. The last thing they heard was the sound of the bell, ringing once more this time, for an eternity.
The vanishing guests. If you think that was terrifying, what happens next will keep you awake. Hit subscribe if you dare. The day after the wedding, the village was different. The air felt heavy, thick with something unspoken. A silence had descended over Elmsford, one that was deeper than any quiet they had ever known. It wasn't just the loss of Emily that unsettled them. It was the way the village seemed to have changed overnight, as if it had shifted in a way that no one could see, but everyone could feel. The church stood empty, its bells silent, its doors wide open. No one dared step inside. Not since that night. Thomas had vanished the same way as Emily, swallowed by the chasm that opened before the altar. His family searched for days, tearing through the forest, combing the village for any trace of him. But the ground was untouched. No footprints. No sign that anything had ever happened. And then there were the disappearances. It started with the village elders. One by one, they too began to vanish. First, old Mrs. Hawthorne, the keeper of the village history, was seen walking toward the church one morning, but she never returned. Then, Mr. Carrick, the local blacksmith, went missing after he ventured into the woods to gather firewood. No one ever saw them again. Not a trace, not a sign. Rumors spread like wildfire. People started talking about curses, about a terrible omen tied to the wedding, and the bell that had rung. They said it was a warning. The bell had been disturbed, and something had been awakened. Something ancient. Something angry. By the end of the week, no one ventured into the village after dark. The streets emptied by sunset. Even the brave ones, those who dared to investigate the disappearances, returned with eyes wide with fear, telling stories of shadowy figures lurking in the corners of the streets and whispers in the wind that called their names. It was Sarah, Emily's best friend, who decided to search for answers. She refused to believe that her friend and Thomas were gone for good. She had to know what had happened to them. On the fourth night, with nothing but a lantern to guide her, Sarah returned to the church. The doors creaked as they opened, and the air inside was thick, suffocating. The stone walls seemed to pulse with something unseen. She stepped into the nave, the lantern's glow flickering against the cold walls. The bell tower stood silent, but Sarah could feel its presence. It loomed over her like a beast waiting to pounce. And then she saw it. At the altar, where Emily had stood on her wedding day, something was different. The floorboards were disturbed, as if something had been dragged across them. And then Sarah saw the markings, the same symbols she'd heard the elders whisper about. They were etched into the stone, deep gouges that seemed to glow faintly in the lantern light. A figure stepped from the shadows. Sarah froze, heart pounding. It was Thomas, but his face was different, pale, his eyes black and empty, as if he was no longer the person he had once been. "I warned you," Thomas said, his voice cold, echoing through the empty church. "The bells never stop ringing. And now you've heard them too." And then, before Sarah could scream, the floor cracked beneath her feet. The chasm had returned. But this time, it wasn't the bell that summoned it. The echo of the bell. If you think this story is terrifying, what happens next will make you question everything. Hit subscribe if you dare. Sarah fell through the floor before she had time to scream, her body twisting in the air as darkness enveloped her. The fall seemed endless, as if the ground itself was reaching to pull her into the depths of something ancient and unforgiving. Her lantern clattered somewhere in the abyss, its faint light flickering out, leaving only cold, impenetrable blackness. When Sarah finally landed, her body jarred with a shock that sent waves of pain through her bones, but she didn't lose consciousness. She couldn't afford to. The air was thick, damp, and stale, filled with a heavy silence that smothered her every breath. She staggered to her feet, her heart pounding in her chest as she looked around. The ground beneath her was uneven, soft, like wet soil, but hard and unforgiving at the same time. The darkness seemed to stretch forever. The ringing began. A single, deep bell toll echoed through the void, so loud and resonant that it felt as if it were vibrating through her very soul. The sound was coming from all directions, surrounding her, suffocating her. And then, the whispers started low, unintelligible voices that seemed to crawl beneath her skin. They were faint at first, but soon they became louder, more distinct. Every word seemed to be pulling her deeper into something, drawing her into the very heart of the darkness. "Come closer," they hissed. "Join us." She stumbled forward, her steps tentative, as if the ground itself was pushing her back, urging her to stop. But she couldn't stop. Not when she saw it. In the distance, barely visible through the swirling shadows, was a figure. The outline was indistinct, like a mirage in the darkness, but Sarah knew who it was. She could feel it in her bones. Emily, her best friend, her face pale, eyes vacant, standing in the center of what appeared to be a vast, empty pit. The chasm stretched beneath her, a gaping hole that seemed to go on forever. Emily's body was frozen in place, her hands outstretched as if she were beckoning Sarah to come closer. But Sarah knew better. She had to be strong. "Emily," she cried out, her voice breaking through the air. "Emily, what happened to you? What is this place?" But Emily didn't answer. She didn't even move. The only sound was the relentless tolling of the bell, growing louder with every passing second. Sarah took a step forward, but the ground beneath her cracked, and suddenly, the earth began to tremble. The bell rang again. It was no longer just a sound, it was a force, a power that gripped the very fabric of reality, pulling it apart. The shadows seemed to bleed into each other, the walls of the chasm widening, closing in around Sarah like a nightmare she couldn't escape. And then she understood. The bell didn't just summon the darkness, it was the darkness. The wedding, the disappearances, the curse on Elmsford, it had all been building to this moment, to the wedding where the bell had rung for the first time in decades. It was a ritual, a way to seal the villagers into the very earth beneath them, trapping them in the endless echo of the bell. Emily, Thomas, and the others, they weren't gone. They were part of the bell now, bound to the curse. Their voices, their souls, would continue to echo through the village forever. But before Sarah could move, before she could run, she felt the ground tremble once more, and the bell tolled one final time. And as it did, a figure emerged from the shadows, its shape tall and distorted, a twisted version of Thomas, his eyes wide and empty. He reached out for her, his mouth opening, but no words came. Only the sound of the bell. Louder, closer, more deafening. In that moment, Sarah realized the truth. She wasn't meant to leave. The bell would never stop ringing.